Hey, it's Jeff with DaringDino.com. In this video, you will learn how to customize your workplace in Blender. I'll cover how to rearrange the workplace by reordering panels, changing window types, adjusting window size, splitting and joining windows, and breaking windows off, which is great for external monitors. We'll see how to change user preferences, and I will wrap up with appending materials and nodes for your startup.blend file. At the end of this tutorial, we'll have a custom-made Blender workplace, which will help you work faster. So let's get right into it now. So the first thing that I'll show you is how to reorder panels. Panels show up all over the place. In the 3D view, if you see the tool shelf and properties panels, which are on the side here, this is the tool shelf and the properties panel, you can see how there's little sections, and some of them are collapsed like the 3 down here, and some of them are expanded like the 3 up here. Now obviously you can collapse and expand these by clicking here, clicking in the title bar, or by pressing A on your keyboard while your mouse is over a panel. That one I find super helpful. But you can also reorder these. So you'll see 2 horizontal small lines, and all you have to do is drag these, and as you drag it with your mouse, you can reorder them. So the whole point of this is that use the ones you use a lot on the top. So I'm actually going to move grease pencil down because I very rarely use the grease pencil tool. I don't use the view a lot, but if I add an object in here, you'll see other panels kind of showing up as well. So I've got transform, which I use that one a lot. My view, I use that one a lot too. 3D cursor, item, display I use every once in a while. Let's collapse shading and keep everything else down there. Yeah, that one's fine too. So now that I've got that kind of set up how I want, let's delete this item with X. And now I've got those panels kind of set up in a way that makes sense to me. I see what I want right away. And then again, you can do that with any type of panel. So you could make different items show up exactly how you want. So one of the best examples is the render panel. This has a lot of different options. By default, the render subpanel is kind of at the top, which makes sense because you want to be able to render an animation or render the audio. But I've completely changed the order of this based on what I use a lot. So I use render, I use the dimensions a lot. I use sampling a lot too. So that one's next. Performance I use a lot. Because sometimes I don't want it to be using all 8 threads if I'm doing something else. The metadata I do use quite a bit, as well as output. I don't use freestyle a whole lot, so let's put that one on the bottom. And then post-processing, I almost never change that, so let's put that next to the bottom. And you can do this for pretty much anything that has a panel, and I encourage you to do so. The next part is the window types. So each window has a type, and you can see it by hovering your mouse over this little icon in the corner with the double arrows next to it. So this is the properties window. This is the outliner window. This is a 3D window. This is the info window, and down here is the timeline window. Now, let's say you never use the outliner. You could change this to be something more useful, like a 3D view. And if you scroll on the bottom here, you can get to the rest of those things. And when you scroll all the way to the side, you can right click and flip that to the top if you wanted that to be up top for some reason. You can also collapse it or maximize the area, and I'll get to that in just a second, but let's flip it back. And then, if you accidentally change this, you can always change it back just by going back into here. And let's change it back to the outliner. And now I've got everything back. So that's a very simple overview of what you can do with the window types. I always recommend changing them to whatever makes the most sense. So go ahead and do that with your version of Blender. Also, it's very helpful to adjust the window size. Obviously, you can adjust the overall window size, but each view, you can also adjust that as well. So all you need to do is put your mouse in between where 2 areas meet. So I'm going to do this area and this area. And if I put my mouse right in between, I get this double-headed arrow. And if I left click and drag, I can move that around. Same goes for horizontal lines. I can drag that. So if I needed more room in my outliner because I have 100 objects and I just need to look at everything there, you can make it bigger. The biggest thing that I'll say is you can maximize a view to be the whole window. And you can do that with Shift and Spacebar. That will maximize it. And when you do that, you'll see a back to previous up near the top, just to go back to that previous layout. In some windows, you can also do it with Control and up arrow, or you can right click on the header bar and do maximize area there. So that's 3 ways you can maximize your space. I do this all the time if I just need tons of room in a certain window. Like usually it's the 3D view, so I have Shift and Spacebar kind of locked in my head as to how I do that. But you can do it with any window too. Like if you needed tons of space in the properties panel over here, you can hit Shift Spacebar and then Shift Spacebar again to toggle it back to where you were, or you can always click the back to previous up here. So now that we've gone over adjusting the window size, let's talk about splitting and joining windows together. This might be one of the hardest things to learn at first. Once you know how to do it though, it's really simple. So if you need more space, you can make more space. Just like I said, you can drag this around, or let's say I don't need this properties panel at all. I can move these two into one window. I can merge them together. So the way you can do that is you can right click in between and go to join area. And if I want to join these two areas together, all I have to do is tell Blender which window I want to be the main one that overwrites the secondary one. So if I have my mouse over this top window here, the properties panel will take over the layout view. And if I make it so that my mouse is on the bottom one, my outliner view will take over my properties view. So let's see what happens when I do that. And it does exactly what you would expect. So, okay, how do I get that other window back? Well, it's pretty easy to do, and you can do it a couple different ways. Just like when I right clicked up here, I also have split area. So if I do that, you can see I've got a line here. That's actually a vertical line for this window because I don't have a horizontal window to split it with. So I'm going to hit escape. And what I'm actually going to do is left click up in the top right or bottom left corner. Each window has these little diagonal lines that you can click and drag to make another split. So if I click and drag to the left or right, it'll split this to be a vertical line like this. Ta-da! And let's right click in between and join this back together. And if I left click and drag up, it'll make a window like that. And then I can change this back to be my properties panel. And it looks exactly how it did before. So either top right or bottom left, you can click and drag. That's the most flexible because you can drag either way and you can do it, pretty quickly. Or you can right click in between and say, I want to split, and then it'll ask you how you want to split, but it kind of goes the opposite of what you would think. Yeah, I would never expect that to be the way it goes. So I usually never do it that way, but that's how you can split and join windows together. One thing I want to very quickly mention is you can also drag one of these windows into a different view, into a different sub window, separate from the rest of Blender. So the best example is let's Shift A to add a mesh and a monkey, and let's put it right at 0, 0, 0. And let's make a duplicate of this window. Say I want one front view of this guy, and then on another monitor, let's say I want like a wider view with everything in my scene. So how would I do that? Well, the way you do that is you shift and drag on one of these handles. So if I hold down Shift and left click to drag, it'll pop out into a separate window, and I'm just gonna make this smaller so you can kind of see why this is advantageous. I'm gonna hide my panels with T and N, and I can, make a wider view, and I can add more stuff into my scene. And let me move it over here so you can actually see it. You know, I can see both of them happening at the exact same time. Obviously, if you've got a really complicated scene, it might start to make your computer perform a little bit slower than usual. But if you want to do this, it is totally doable. One of my favorite examples is having like an image editor open in one window as a reference and your other stuff going on over here. So that's very, very helpful, especially if you've got an external monitor. Now, all this stuff that we've been talking about is captured by the layouts. And the layout is kind of this overarching way of managing your different layouts. I hate using a word to describe or define another word, but let me quickly show you what these all are. So if I go to 3D view full, this is a full 3D view. So if I add a monkey in, I've got my 3D view and nothing else. Pretty interesting. Let's go to animation. Okay, now I've got a 3D view, outliner, properties, a bigger timeline window, and then some F-curves and the dope sheet. So these are all things that are very helpful for animation. And compositing, I use this one all the time because I use materials and nodes a lot. You've got a 3D view, an image view, and your node view. So all these things are doing is kind of storing your layout for each one. And if you want to make a new one, what you probably want to do is start with something that's close. So let's say I want to do something with compositing. I would start with that, and then what I would probably do is like something like, I don't know, just for fun, I'll join this over here, and then if I go back in here, now I have this one saved here, but if I want to make a new one, let's call it like Daring Dino View. And then in my list up here, I've got that one, and that's how you can make your own view. So that, let's go back to default. It's like that. And then I can go over here and everything's fine. Now, obviously I also, by doing that, got rid of my compositing view. So let's make a new screen by doing that. And let's just rename this to be compositing. And then let's split this view over here by dragging on the bottom left corner. Actually, it's easier to do it on the top right up here. And then let's bring this one back to be an image editor. And now it's pretty much exactly how the compositing was before. And every time you do something, it automatically saves it here. This is how you make a new screen, and this is how you delete one, but you can only delete the active one. So I can go to Daring Dino View, and it's there, and compositing is there. Let's go to default.001. And you can see how that kind of messed up my stuff. So let's make a new window and we can get back to normal here. So that is how you can customize layouts to make the most sense for you. All right, the next thing on our list is user preferences. So you get to user preferences by going to File, User Preferences. There's also a keyboard shortcut as well. And you will notice that it probably loads in this interface view. I'm not going to go over the interface or editing or input, but what I will go over is the add-ons and themes. So add-ons are things that you can enable or disable to make Blender do new and exciting things. You can add add-ons through this window here. So if I want this 3D view, 3D navigation, I can click to enable that. And over here, now I have a navigation panel. And if I uncheck it, it's gone. So I hope you learned a lot about customizing your workplace in Blender. If you have a great tip for getting your workplace set up, let me know on Twitter at daring_dino or in the comments below. And don't forget, if you want to get free resources and great tutorials like this, sign up for the newsletter at daringdino.com/newsletter and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.